Nimue is a young fairy from a magical tribe that lives in harmony with nature. One day, she witnesses birds flying in strange spirals, a phenomenon she can't explain. At camp, her younger brother Squirrel hands her some stolen wine and reminds her to prepare the offerings for the ritual that will elect the new summoner of the tribe. Later, she searches for offerings in the forest and is surprised by a deer that calls her the fairy queen and begs for help to save someone. Before she can ask, two hunters bring down the animal. Her relationship with the clan is quite hostile, as she's been considered a cursed witch since childhood. At age 5, while following a voice in the forest, she was attacked by a brown bear consumed by shadows. Young, Nimue used her instinctive magic to drop a rock on the beast, being rescued at the last second by her mother, Lenore. But the clash left a deep scar on her back, which the elders interpreted as the mark of a malevolent entity. Fearing that the darkness would return to claim her and put everyone in danger, the tribe isolated her. Terrified by her extraordinary power, during the ceremony at the fire altar, the sacred seal contradicts the will of the elders and chooses Nimue as the new summoner. However, hurt by years of rejection and isolation, she refuses the honor and decides it's time to abandon the camp for good. Meanwhile, Father Cardan and his Red Knights are exterminating fairy villages under the justification of purifying pagans in the name of God. Relying on the lethality of his main assassin, Lancelot, a survivor from a nearby village arrives at Nimue's clan, begging for help and warning of the massacre. Far away, in the castle, King Uther grows irritated with Cardan's extremist actions, pressured by severe drought. Let the peasants blame on fairy magic. And in his own kingdom, Uther demands that Merlin conjure rain to calm the population and stop the paladins. What the king doesn't know is that Merlin, now a drunk and indifferent, has completely lost his powers. Determined to flee her tribe, Nimue rides off on horseback with her friend Pin toward the docks, but discovers that the ship has left and the next one won't arrive for 6 months. With no alternatives, they return and stop in a small town. There they meet Arthur, who is enchanted by Nimue at first sight and invites them to drink. At the bar, a disagreeable man named Bors tries to force a bet for a kiss, and she uses her magic discreetly to defeat him. When he tries to attack her, she repels him violently with a spell. Frightened by the commotion, Pin pulls her friend out of the place. When they return to camp, the clan is being decimated and burned by the Red Knights. In the chaos, Pin is captured and Nimue can't prevent it. Desperate, she finds her younger brother and hides him in a safe place. Running to the temple, Nimue finds her mother severely wounded. Lenore hands her daughter a mysterious sword and gives her the mission to take it to the wizard Merlin. When a red paladin invades the place, Lenore sacrifices her own life to stop him, screaming for her daughter to run. Meanwhile, in the castle, Merlin's attempt to conjure rain results in a macabre event. A storm descends accompanied by strange phenomena. And King Uther celebrates the end of the drought only to drink the water and be horrified to realize it's raining fresh blood. At the same time, Nimue grabs the sword and flees to the forest, but is cornered by a pack of wild wolves. With no way out, she climbs a rock, and as she raises the blade, a magical power radiates from her body. With precise movements, she defeats the entire wolf pack alone. Moving toward the meeting point with her brother, she's discovered by a Red Knight. She tries to escape by running, but is thrown to the ground, and they initiate a fight. At the height of the confrontation, her magic awakens. Again, then countless roots sprout from the ground and capture him. When she regains consciousness, she's in shock seeing the opponent completely dominated brutally by nature. Shortly after, Father Cardan and assassin Lancelot find the slain wolves. By the tracks, Lancelot deduces that the feat was the work of a single woman. Soon they come across the knight, trapped by the roots. The sight terrifies the other guards who kneel in fear before the witchcraft, but awakens Cardan's fury, who severely reprimands them. Meanwhile, Squirrel waits for his sister, but is surprised by the arrival of Lancelot. The assassin decides not to eliminate him immediately, using the boy as bait. When Nimue arrives at the location, she no longer finds her brother. During the night, Squirrel's friends attempt to rescue him at the enemy camp, but fall into the trap, and Lancelot neutralizes the rescue group with extreme ease. Then he frees Squirrel on purpose, ensuring the boy spreads the message of terror to the rest of his people. Far away, Nimue sneaks into a city, discovering that the Red Knights have placed a bounty of 30 gold coins for her. Capture, labeled as the Blood Wolf Witch. With nowhere to run, she bumps into Arthur again, who offers help. During the conversation, she's recognized by Bors, seeking revenge and eyeing the valuable sword. He tries to attack her. Nimue pretends to surrender, but quickly draws her weapon and wounds him with precision, getting a breach to escape. Arthur pulls her onto his horse, and the two flee the city. Meanwhile, Wizard Merlin arrives at the ruins of the clan temple and finds Lenore's body. His reaction makes it clear the two had a shared past, and the loss affects him deeply. On the way out, he's intercepted by a mystical entity known as the Daughter of Death. She alerts him about the prophecy that says whoever wields the Sword of Power will become the true king. The sorceress advises him to abandon alcoholism and recover the blade before it falls into the wrong hands. But Merlin ignores her completely. At the same time, Arthur takes Nimue to a safe hideout. However, while she sleeps, he steals the sword and flees. In a flashback, after Arthur's father sacrificed himself to save an innocent girl, he made one last request: that his son abandon revenge and focus on becoming a great knight to restore the family's honor. After the tragedy, Arthur and his sister Morgana were hunted by creditors. With no options, the young man sought help from his wealthy uncle Hector, who denied financial assistance and sent Morgana to a monastery to rid himself of the burden. In the present, stealing Nimue's sword serves a specific purpose. Arthur seeks his uncle with the weapon to ensure his nomination for a tournament that would earn him the title of knight, fulfilling the promise made to his father. And knowing the sword's brute force and rarity, Hector agrees to sponsor him. When questioned about the sword's origin, Arthur lies, claiming he received it as a reward for saving a maiden. When she wakes up, Nimue realizes the sword is gone and deduces that Arthur took it. The desperation for the weapon is interrupted by the strange novice Iris, who questions her and suspects she carries a demon. Morgana intervenes, scares the girl away, and tries to warn Nimue about the dangers of the place. But the young woman only thinks of recovering the sword. When trying to leave the monastery, Nimue encounters the Red Knights and Father Cardan surrounding the perimeter, being forced to retreat. Sister Nora discovers her and, to protect her from persecution against fairies, claims Nimue is pregnant. A serious violation of local laws, but which awakens the compassion of the women. They disguise her in a nun's habit and put her to help treat a severely wounded paladin. She freezes upon recognizing the man she herself had imprisoned in the forest. When Morgana extracts a magical root from the patient, his condition worsens and Nimue is sent to fetch bandages. In a distant tavern, the Daughter of Death delivers to Merlin what he's been looking for, advising him not to try to destroy the sword with fairy fire to avoid a tragic end. Indifferent, the wizard claims he's already lived too long to fear anything. Far away, Nimue learns that Cardan obtained a map of villages in a list of elders, planning to use them to exterminate the magical races. The danger increases when assassin Lancelot senses the fairy presence in the monastery, finds Nimue's clothes, and alerts Cardan. Father demands that Sister Nora summon all the nuns for interrogation. Taking advantage of the meeting's distraction, Nimue acts stealthily, steals the leader's documents, and burns them in a fireplace. In the city, Arthur is confronted by his uncle Hector and by Bors, who reveals the sword theft and tries to blackmail them. Disappointed with his nephew's lie, Hector orders the arrest of both. In a fit of rage, Arthur draws the sword and defeats Bors's companion in a quick fight, forcing the blackmailer to flee. After the commotion, Hector confiscates the magical weapon and delivers it to the commander of the Red Knights. In the monastery, Lancelot inspects the nuns without success until the talkative Iris denounces that a newly arrived novice is missing from the formation. In the infirmary, the wounded knight awakens and recognizes Nimue immediately. So, to protect her, Morgana acts quickly and uses a flask with poison hidden in her sleeve to silence the guard permanently. With the disguise compromised and the monastery on alert, Morgana guides Nimue through a secret passage to a dark river in the underground. She hands her a map and reveals an escape route already prepared, making clear that this wasn't the first time she's helped someone escape from there. To cover her allies' escape and avoid suspicion of complicity, Morgana stages an assault scenario, pretending she was attacked by the fugitive before letting her leave. The act temporarily convinces Cardan and the Red Knights leave the abbey, but takes Sister Nora as a prisoner for having harbored the criminal from the start. While Iris has her request to join the Red Knights summarily ignored by Father Cardan, Nimue follows Morgana's instructions and arrives at the secret meeting point. There she meets Duzel and Cleo, who use vegetable sails as cover to rescue ferry refugees. Morgana's tunnel network is the core of the resistance, guiding survivors to a hidden sanctuary called Nemos. However, Nimue refuses the safe escape and decides to go after Arthur to recover her sword. Far away, in a port city, Pin takes shelter with an acquaintance and with no better options for survival, boards the ship of a northern pirate. Meanwhile, Merlin is escorted to King Rugen and uses his charm, lying that he wants to help him obtain the sword of power to transform him into a ruthless emperor. Rugen is suspicious, but the wizard intrigues him by displaying a valuable mystical artifact. Back at the abbey, fanatic Iris begins obsessively watching Morgana, sensing the danger of imminent betrayal. She packs her things and flees the monastery. At the same time, Arthur is interrogated about the sword's origin. Taking advantage of a guard's distraction, he frees himself from the shackles, knocks down the enemy, and jumps from the moving vehicle, ensuring his escape. In Rugen's territory, Merlin is taken to the treasure room, where he finds the legendary fairy flame. After getting the king drunk and pretending to fall asleep to be taken to his room, he invades the vault, stealthily steals the magical fire, and escapes on horseback with his allies' help. In a town, Nimue finally catches up to Arthur and corners him with a dagger, demanding his weapon. He confesses the sword was confiscated by the Red Knights and tries to convince her to forget about it, but she forces him to help her track down the squadron. On the way, they find Duzel's carriage destroyed with no survivors, leaving only the cry of a small girl. From the Cobra tribe, tracking the attackers, Nimue locates the enemy carriage stopped near a lake. She invades the vehicle and recovers the sword in secret, but decides to stay to avenge her fallen allies. As she wields the blade and calls for strength, the sword's runes glow intensely. Channeling the weapon's ancestral power, Nimue advances relentlessly, defeating an entire squad of guards alone. After the confrontation, she locates the surviving little girl hidden and rescues her. At the same time, fanatic Iris sets the monastery on fire, destroying the place completely and claiming for herself the mantle of Red Knight. Nimue, Arthur, and the little girl arrive safely at the Nemo's hideout. There they reunite with Morgana, and Nimue reveals her mother's mission: deliver the blade to Merlin. Morgana disagrees and warns that the scenario has changed. Nimue is now seen as the leader who controls the sword of power and must guide the fairies. As the artifact is coveted by all kings, Morgana suggests using it as currency in exchange for territorial safety. She writes a letter containing the ultimatum. Merlin must convince King Uther to send troops to protect the fairies from the Red Knights, where the sword won't be handed over. The strategy complicates when Merlin, approaching the castle gates, is intercepted and arrested for treason. Before being captured, the sorcerer gives a final order to his horse, sending the animal galloping to alert his ally. Under Lancelot's protection, Father Cardan meets with the Pope and is harshly reprimanded for the incompetence of letting the Blood Wolf, which humiliate the Red Knights. He gives An ultimatum. Either Cardan captures Nimue and recovers the Sword of Power, or he'll lose command of the Order forever. Far away, at sea, Pin is discovered as a stowaway on the pirate ship and nearly thrown overboard. However, a sailor winks at her, suggesting she take on the role of healer. Since the crew's old doctor had passed on, the lie saves her life, and she officially joins the Red Lance gang, led by a captain, waging war for power against the Ice King, Cumber. At the Nemo's hideout, Morgana takes Nimue to Aba, the elder of the Moon Clan, using the woman's ability to send a negotiation letter to Merlin. In the castle, King Uther accumulates defeats against the Ice King. Manipulated by the Queen, who blames Merlin for the kingdom's failures, he orders maximum punishment for the wizard if he doesn't deliver the magical sword. With the blade out of reach, Merlin is taken to the executioner, but Aba's eagle delivers Nimue's letter at the last second, suspending the sentence. Aware that the Queen wants to eliminate him, he confronts her using a dark secret as blackmail. Uther is not the true heir to the throne. After the royal baby died prematurely, the Queen switched him with a peasant son who were later silenced to cover up the hoax. The wizard reveals having protected the only living witness, the midwife, ensuring his untouchability before the monarch. At the Nemo's refuge, Nimue and Arthur take advantage of the atmosphere of a local wedding to confess their feelings. However, the calm is interrupted by the arrival of a group of survivors brought by Squirrel. What Nimue doesn't realize is that Iris is infiltrated among them, disguised and watching her with blind hatred. The romantic situation also complicates with the appearance of the Green Knight, revealed as Gawain, a childhood friend of Nimue, leaving Arthur consumed by jealousy. As they debate about the sword's fate, Gawain opposes handing it to Merlin due to the sorcerer's terrible reputation among fairies. Intrigued by her mother's last wish to pass on the weapon, Nimue asks the elder Aba for help, who uses a dream spell to connect Nimue and Merlin's minds. In the vision, a shocking truth comes to light. The wizard is her true biological father. Ignoring Arthur and Gawain's protests, Nimue heads to the meeting point, accompanied by Cleo and Morgana. In the castle, Merlin assures Uther he'll bring the sword back, but his real plan is to use the fairy flame hidden in his horse's saddle to destroy the artifact forever. As the wizard prepares for the journey, the Queen watches his every step, hoping to track down the hidden midwife. Outside the walls, the fury of Father Cardan's invasions destroyed the fairies' crops, plunging the entire region into a severe famine crisis. At the Nemo's hideout, the fairies face a severe food shortage and plan to transport grain from the only remaining mill in the region. Gawain suggests forming a protection group, but Arthur recognizes the strategy as a fatal trap, prepared by the Red Knights. However, with no other food source, the mission proceeds despite the warning, with only a reduced number of 6 warriors. Meanwhile, Nimue arrives at the ruins of an abandoned castle for the meeting with Merlin. She asks Morgana and Cleo to keep watch and confronts the wizard alone. To hand over the sword, she imposes the condition of hearing how he knew Lenore and why he abandoned the family. Pressured, Merlin uses his magic to project memories of the past. Gravely wounded and unconscious in the clan sanctuary, he was rescued by Lenore, who was then just a young girl. During medical care, she extracted from his shoulder a peculiar fragment that she recognized as the magical sword itself. With time spent during recovery, Lenore kept the fugitive's secret and they lived a romance. Although the revelation brings father and daughter closer, the focus soon shifts, recognizing Nimue's potential for ancestral magic, but noting her complete lack of control. Merlin teaches her to channel her energy through intention and focus instead of pure rage. Following the instructions, she succeeds in bringing life back to a withered apple tree. In the castle's center, when he tries to charge the sword as payment for the lesson, she demands to see the rest of the past. After accessing memories about her own creation, which embarrasses her, she watches the moment of Her parents' separation. She sees that Lenore refused to return the sword, fearing its corrupting effect, demanding that the wizard abandon the clan and never return to keep him away from that fatal power. When she regains consciousness, Nimue takes advantage of the wizard sleeping and steals his catalyst necklace to explore deeper memories. What she finds terrifies her. Visions of a dark past where Merlin wielded the blade and led the fairy army in brutal massacres against human cities. When he wakes up, the wizard is confronted by her, furious and armed, accusing him of being a bloodthirsty murderer. But the clash is interrupted when Morgana detects the approach of the king's knights. The pair runs to the castle to rescue Nimue, who flees taking the sword with her. Far away, at the mill, the ambush Arthur predicted comes to pass. Right upon arrival, one of his companions is hit by an arrow fired by Lancelot's troops. Arthur tries to counterattack and collides with the assassin, but is quickly overpowered. While Gawain retreats to save Arthur and protect the group's retreat, they're cornered in the factory by a massive squad of red knights, making escape impossible. To deceive the king's soldiers, Nimue, Morgana, and Cleo abandon the horses as bait and take shelter in a hidden cave. What they don't know is that the location is the lair of the feared sorceress Killier, a macabre creature responsible for the deaths of countless innocents. Dominated by the creature's enchantment, Nimue walks in a trance to a deep abyss and throws the sword of power into the darkness. Upon waking from the spell and panicking, Morgana volunteers to descend and recover it. At the bottom of the valley, Morgana finds Celia, who she believed had died in the abbey fire. Celia claims the reunion is a gift from Killier and that her friend should trust the sorceress. In a grotesque act, the dead nun deposits a small spider on Morgana's lips, which crawls down her throat while Celia disappears into the shadows. Dazed, Morgana recovers the sword and returns to the surface. As soon as she regains possession of the weapon, Nimue senses the imminent danger threatening Arthur's life and leads Morgana and Cleo on a desperate rescue mission. Meanwhile, Merlin frees himself from chains and escapes Uther's guard unnoticed. However, he doesn't suspect that King Rugen, furious over the stolen fairy flame, has hired a professional assassin to hunt him down and make him pay with his life. On the Redlands pirate ship, Pin recovers from her illness while dealing with the captain's frustration over scarce plunder. To reverse the situation, she suggests the crew start attacking the Red Knights' camps, which had accumulated much wealth from invading other lands. The strategy is an absolute success, but greed goes to the captain's head. She decides to expand the attacks to plunder anyone in her path, putting Pin herself in danger. Far away, Merlin locates the queen's old midwife, who had lived in hiding. Calling in an old debt, he takes her to the camp of the Ice King, Cumber. The wizard's plan is to use the woman's testimony to prove that he's an illegitimate heir, hoping to gain Cumber's alliance and protection in return. During the mill siege, Lancelot sets fire to the place to force the fairies out. With no alternatives, Gawain and Arthur decide to face the Red Knights outside in combat. As they advance, a colossal magical tornado suddenly forms, sucking in the smoke from the flames and sweeping enemy troops into absolute chaos. The magical storm rescues the two warriors and transports them to safety. Lancelot realizes that powerful ancestral magic is at work. The rescue was orchestrated by Nimue. With the sword of power in hand, she saves the cornered fairies and guides them back to the hideout. Faced with the imminent threat and the cry for a leader, she assumes her calling, swears to protect everyone to the end, and is crowned as the true queen of the fairies. The moment of glory, however, is threatened when Lancelot tracks the magical remnants to the vicinity of the Nemo's hideout. To ensure the clan's survival, Arthur recruits Druna, a smuggler with declared hatred for the Red Knights. She offers 3 ships to transport the fairies safely to Byzantium within 6 days. Nimue accepts the offer, and they gather to plan the escape. But a spy interrupts the council of tribes within. Alert! Lancelot's troops are only one day away. To buy time and protect the escape route, Nimue makes a bold decision and orders her new army to capture the small city of Gramarye. In the Nordic camp, King Cumber spreads the news about the farce of Uther's lineage through his eldest daughter, destroying the enemy. Monarch's reputation. Merlin asks Cumber to protect Nimue, but what he doesn't know is that the king is also negotiating with Father Cardan, who offered rich fairy lands confiscated in exchange for the Ice King's conversion to the church and the complete annihilation of the magical races. The cruelty of the deal enrages Merlin, who finally deciphers Cardan's true intentions. The priest is just an ambitious man using the church's name to accumulate military power, since the Order of Red Knights was never officially recognized by the Pope in Rome. Meanwhile, Uther confronts the Queen Mother about the growing rumors of his peasant origin, realizing that the lie sustaining his entire reign is about to crumble. In the port city of Gramarye, the Red Knights' troops are caught off guard. Unbeknownst to them, dozens of fairy warriors have already infiltrated the location. As bait, Nimue appears on horseback at the forest's edge, drawing a large enemy battalion into the dense woods. Kneeling and wielding the sword of power, she manipulates roots and branches that attack soldiers like relentless serpents. The remaining guards in the city only hear screams coming from the forest before seeing riderless horses returning in panic. Terrified, they retreat, allowing Nimue to advance majestically and take the city with the help of her allies. The excessive use of magic, however, takes its toll. Nimue feigns from exhaustion. Taking advantage of the vulnerability, fanatic Iris approaches with a knife, but the Green Knight intervenes in time and pushes the girl away. Upon waking, Nimue has a surprise. Her best friend Pin is alive. She had been captured during a pirate attack and imprisoned in the city, but is now free. She begs Nimue to heal her wounded pirate companion, but the fairy queen is too weak and can't save him. Far away, Uther and Father Cardan form a sinister alliance to exterminate the fairies once and for all. Knowing of the imminent danger, Merlin is warned by the sorceress that Nimue's death is near. Desperate to protect his daughter, he begs asylum from King Cumber. The Nordic king agrees to keep her alive, but imposes the condition that she become his personal prisoner in exchange for the Sword of Power. On the outskirts of the captured city, fairies begin mysteriously disappearing. The Green Knight and Cleo investigate the forest and find traces of ambush. Suddenly, Lancelot appears and attacks relentlessly. The Green Knight is overwhelmed and captured, but during the hand-to-hand combat makes a discovery. Lancelot is also a fairy fighting cowardly against his own race. To make matters worse, Nimue feels the Sword of Power, gradually corrupting her mind, transforming her into an aggressive and cold warrior. Furthermore, bad news continues. The promised ships for escape won't come, as the smuggler was eliminated. Young Squirrel disappears without a trace, and the combined troops of Uther and Cardan surround the walls, initiating a total siege. Racing against time to prevent the prophecy, Merlin gallops toward the besieged city. Midway, his survival instinct alerts him, but he's struck in the chest by an arrow. The shooter is the assassin hired by King Ruggin, who reveals he's there not only for the reward from stealing the fairy flame, but for pure revenge against the wizard. Confident that Merlin is incapacitated and vulnerable, the assassin lowers his guard. In a quick and lethal move, the wizard rips the arrow from his own body and attacks the enemy by surprise. Within Gramarye's walls, food scarcity threatens to start immediate civil war between fairies and local humans. Facing the chaos, Hector suggests unconditional surrender. In the enemy camp, the Pope sends elite guards from Rome to oversee Father Cardan's steps, threatening to take his command in case of attack failure. Breaking through the blockades, Merlin manages to enter the city and shocks everyone. Revealing he's Nimue's biological father, he exposes the diplomatic agreement made with King Cumber, trying to convince her to surrender as a prisoner to spare her life, and that of her people. Confident in her strength and refusing to bow to tyrants, Nimue rejects the offer immediately, and warns she's ready for war. Lancelot delivers the Green Knight to Cardan's camp. After resisting brutal interrogation in silence, Gawain confronts Lancelot privately. The assassin questions why he hasn't been exposed as a fairy to the priest, and he responds that he'd never betray a brother of his race. He tries to convince Lancelot to fight for his own people, planting a strong seed of doubt in the warrior's heart. In the castle, finally, Uther rebels, tired of being a mere puppet and aware that the Queen Mother eliminated his true mother in the past. He poisons the monarch's wine cup, putting a definite end to her reign of manipulation. Shortly after, he sends a proposal, Nimue's freedom in exchange for the Sword of Power. She agrees, imposing the non-negotiable condition that the fairies be spared. Meanwhile, at the enemy camp, young Squirrel infiltrates to rescue Gawain. Gravely wounded and unable to flee, he sends the boy away alone and honors him with a new name of warrior, Percival. However, the escape fails and the boy ends up captured. When Cardan orders him to suffer severe punishment, Lancelot intervenes to protect him. The insubordination enrages the priest, who strikes his assassin violently across the face. Meanwhile, King Cumber's daughter confirms to Cardan that the Nordic troops accepted to kill the witch. Far away, Iris loses her mind completely. Driven by extreme delusion and blind hatred, she attacks a guard at the arsenal, steals a lethal weapon, and sets off on a crusade to annihilate Nimue. In the city, the mystical entity confronts Morgana upon sensing Killior's magic within her. After swallowing the macabre spider, Morgana gained dark powers, including the ability to see the dead. The entity reveals the plan is to capture the fairy queen, but Nimue appears in time and expels the creature with her magic. Nonetheless, Morgana keeps the secret to herself. The fairies prepare complete evacuation of Gramarye. Before that, Nimue hands the Sword of Power to Morgana to carry away, revealing her true plan. The surrender is just a pretext, and she intends to invade the camp with empty hands only to rescue Gawain and Squirrel personally. At the same time, Merlin arrives at Uther's tent and exposes the monarch's fraud, revealing he knows that the promise to protect the fairies is a lie. Uther, however, condemns the wizard to execution for having hidden and covered up his peasant origin for so many years. During the escape, Morgana is confronted again by Celia's vision. The apparition demands the Sword of Power be handed to Killior's Dark Temple. But, completely loyal to Nimue, she refuses the order and continues on her way. On the coast, Nimue finds that Uther fulfilled the promise and prepared the evacuation ships. Confident in the deal, she enters the king's tent unarmed to demand the immediate release of Gawain and Squirrel. Meanwhile, Morgana sneaks through Uther's camp carrying the sword, but is intercepted by the mystical entity trying to prevent her from interfering in Nimue's fate. In a confrontation, Morgana eliminates the creature and absorbs all its dark power. On the beach, the fairies' boarding is brutally interrupted by a surprise attack from King Cumber's army. However, the Red Lance pirates appear on the horizon. Led by Pin, they join forces with the fairies, turn the tide, and crush the Nordic troops. Irritated by Uther's refusal to hand over the fairy queen, Father Cardan orders a massive night attack by the Red Knights against the royal camp. Seizing the chaos of battle, Lancelot invades the cells and frees Squirrel. When the Pope's elite guards corner them, he finally chooses his side, then stands alone to face the enemy battalion, ensuring the boys escape. In the confusion, Cardan finds Nimue vulnerable. As he raises his weapon for the final blow, Morgana emerges from the shadows using her new abilities. She hands the Sword of Power into her friend's hands and vanishes like smoke. With the artifact, Nimue reacts quickly and delivers a lethal blow that eliminates Father Cardan once and for all. Soon after, Morgana's new gifts alert her that Merlin will be the next victim. She guides Nimue to the wizard, who is gravely wounded at the edge of the camp. The three attempt to flee across a stone bridge over a massive waterfall, but are surprised by Iris. Without hesitation, she fires two deadly arrows that strike Nimue squarely. The fairy queen collapses from the bridge and plummets toward the waters of the abyss. The shock of seeing his daughter fall awakens Merlin's dormant magic. As he wields the magical sword, his eyes glow with pure electrical energy. In absolute fury, the wizard conjures devastating lightning bolts that force Iris to flee terrified and annihilate the Red Knights approaching the bridge. With no time to waste, Merlin grabs Morgana and the two disappear in a flash of lightning. Far from the chaos, Squirrel finds Lancelot gravely wounded and rescues him. The boy introduces himself with his new name of honor, Percival, marking the union of the two first warriors, who in the future will form the legendary Knights of the Round Table. Iris survives and receives the Pope's highest consecration for the attack. Arthur's path to becoming the great king of legend has only just begun, and the true fate of the Fairy Queen in the depths of the waterfall remains a mystery.